This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwallpod Podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 527 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Wotzko, and today we will talk about Borussia Dortmund closing the gap to league leaders Bayern Munich down to 6 points with a 3-2 win over Heidenheim. Are we in a title race? We'll discuss that for sure. We will also talk about the winter transfer window that has just shut, and of course we will have to discuss Dortmund's Champions League exploits, and of course the next opponent for the playoff round, if you want to call it that, against Atalanta. For all that and more, or probably not that much more, I'm joined by Lars Parmant. Hello Lars, how are you doing?
Hello Stefan, please don't let it be more. I'm fine, how are you?
I'm hanging in there a little. Today is, as some people will have seen as their posts on social media, by Borussia Dortmund, World Cancer Day, and unfortunately my dog right now is battling lymphoma, and while the initial treatments have managed for him to get his cancer into remission, unfortunately he has decided to come back, and we are currently looking for other treatment options to work. We already tried one, but unfortunately that didn't quite work. So yesterday Sammy got another chemo treatment, another multi-agent option, and yeah, it's something that's definitely weighing on my wife and myself. Sammy, luckily as a dog, doesn't quite know what's going on, but yeah, it's definitely difficult. So guess something I'll just share, but yeah, we're obviously not here to discuss that. We're here to talk about Borussia Dortmund, and let's be honest, the recent weeks have been rather exciting, as Borussia Dortmund did manage to dispatch Union Berlin 3-0, and more recently did also beat Heidenheim 3-2 at the Westfalenstadion, even though that was not quite as easygoing as we were all hoping for, but nevertheless, Bayern Munich did lose to FC Augsburg and then followed it up with a 2-2 draw away to Hamburg. So now Dortmund have closed the lead down to 6 points. We will discuss in a minute how we did that, but those are the strict facts, and I personally think just because 6 points is not that much, we can at least for now say that Dortmund have re-entered the title race. Of course, agreeing with me after the game, we can discuss this maybe first, is of course Nico Schlotterbeck, who basically said in so many words that at 6 points, Bayern still have to come to Dortmund, and as Borussia Dortmund now, you have to have the ambition to tell the fans that yes, we want to become champions. Niko Kovac, meanwhile, at the news conference, had an answer for that, saying that his focus is more on increasing the distance between Dortmund and the opponents in the rearview mirror, which, currently I think Dortmund are 9 points ahead of 5th place Leipzig. So that for right now is obviously good news, and it is also very important to have that gap for sure. Lars, which team are you? Are you Team Nico with a C or Team Nico with a K? Or are you just Team Nico CK, where you just say, why not both?
I can understand both viewpoints. So if it's a CK, I guess that works. I can definitely understand when a player wants to be as ambitious as possible, especially someone like Schlotterbeck, who hasn't won anything in his life, but who clearly belongs in the discussion of, top, let's say 10, 15 center halves in Europe. So, and he isn't a kid anymore. I think he's 26. So at some point in your footballing life, you want to win something. So it's only natural that he sees this as a decent opportunity, to close the gap even further on Bayern if at the end of the month they come here and Dortmund managed to win that game. That is 3 points, at least arithmetically. There is a title race, I suppose, but I can also understand Niko Kovac and Sebastian Kehl, who basically have nothing to gain by, verbally challenging Bayern Munich, who until that Augsburg game, most people would probably have said they have a really very good shot at, matching Bayer Leverkusen's record of an unbeaten title. I probably would have been in that camp as well. So for Bayern to have dropped 5 points in those 2 games and it's still being 6 points to Dortmund, that kind of says a little bit in itself, because Bayern really don't usually drop 5 points in 2 games, and they still have a fairly nice cushion to Dortmund. So the problem for Kovac and Kehl is if they now, change tune and declare themselves in this title race and whatever, and it doesn't work out, which, let's face it, is the much more likely outcome than the other one, then all the people, especially, from media parts, so I'm looking specifically at Bild-Zeitung, who are now, putting out, the articles and the criticisms that they aren't, fully going for it, there is a lack of ambition or whatever. They would be the first ones to throw it in their face if the title challenge were to falter, which again is the more likely outcome. So I can understand both viewpoints. Personally, I don't think, shouting out your ambitions makes a difference. So I don't think Dortmund will win 1 point more if they say, hey, we want to challenge Bayern for this title. So to me, it's all basically a wash. And at the end of the day, it's kind of only a topic because there's no midweek fixture this week. If, this week where they play Champions League football, I don't think we'd be talking much about, statements made after the game. And I especially don't like when those statements are then rehashed like on Tuesday and people act like it's a whole new story when the quotes haven't changed because there was no media availability in between. So I don't know. To be honest, I don't think there is a real title race because I don't see Bayern dropping 6 points the rest of the season. I would be surprised somewhat. Obviously, if the title were to be sewn up by the middle of April and they advance to the Champions League semi-final, maybe they drop points because the Bundesliga doesn't matter much at that point. But I'd be more surprised if Bayern were to drop more than 6 points from here on out.
Well, the one good news is it is sport after all, and crazy things do happen, and football being a low-scoring game. But realistically, Bayern Munich are still pretty much playing a historic season. I mean, their goal difference right now is plus 56. They are playing a really awesome season, and Dortmund obviously right now are finally enough only like 3 points above Hoffenheim, and right now if you look at on-form teams in the Bundesliga, I feel like Hoffenheim have better chances considering the way they're playing to challenge Bayern than Dortmund would have. But funnily enough, Bayern and Hoffenheim will play on a match day that is up next, and of course that will have big implications whether we will have real title race or not, because I think if Hoffenheim managed to get a point or all 3 and Dortmund managed to beat a struggling Wolfsburg, then of course another close gap could really...
Can I ask a question, Stefan?
Yeah.
If Hoffenheim beat Bayern, are Hoffenheim then in the title race with Bayern?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
If Hoffenheim closed the gap down to 6 points and we talk about the title race of Dortmund being there, I think so, because Hoffenheim right now are pretty stable. They play pretty good football. They keep winning games in a impressive fashion. Whether they actually win the title, I don't think so, obviously. But I would still classify them in the title race for that moment if they beat Bayern. Yes, that is sort of my viewpoint.
I wonder if the media will do the same then.
I don't know. I have no idea what the media will do, but that is sort of my perspective. Is I think 6 points is sort of a distance that can be made up, but obviously we're all not really convinced that anyone else but Bayern Munich are going to win the title this year.
Isn't
right?
there also something to be said for the fact that it's with Dortmund, or with respect to Dortmund, it's 6 points, but Bayern also have to still come to Dortmund, whereas Hoffenheim would have obviously won 3 points off Bayern already. Like, it's probably a moot point anyway, because
well, Hoffenheim will say, well, Bayern still have to play in Dortmund.
yeah, I mean, everything's coming up Hoffenheim, so who's to say?
Yeah, I honestly don't know how things will unfold, and we're talking a lot in hypotheticals right now, but it is better to be discussing a potential title race than to be 15 points down. So I'd rather do that, honestly. And hey, I think it's refreshing. I'm enjoying whatever this is while it lasts, and if Dortmund can give Bayern a bit of a run for their money, then that is already something that is, if we talk about KPIs or whatever, that is certainly something that I always hope that Dortmund, even if they don't win the title, at least challenge for it, and that would be the challenging part. So, it is something. Obviously, we can now discuss the Heidenheim game. Heidenheim obviously in last place right now. The typical you're in last place, but you're playing better than that. I think applies here. But nevertheless, this is obviously a game where Dortmund could have made things a little bit easier for themselves. How did you experience this game, knowing that Dortmund could close the gap down to 6 points, and sort of the approach from the black and yellows going into this home fixture?
I mean, me personally, I don't care about the distance to Bayern on match day or whatever. That's a discussion for after the game. So it's basically just win this game at home against the last place team in the Bundesliga. As you said, I would certainly agree that they are not your typical 18th place team, and neither would St. Pauli be, for that matter. I think there are a number of worse sides in the Bundesliga, but them's the breaks. Honestly, I was quite okay with the first half. Obviously a bit cagey, Heidenheim defending rather well, a lot of set pieces obviously, and then the goal coming from a set piece. Definitely no foul on Dian Dramay, whereas there was definitely enough contact with the arm, which isn't part of the equation, from Patrick Meinka against Gregor Kobel. So both of those calls were absolutely correct in my opinion. And then, I mean, a solid, decent enough first half against a, well-organized opponent, kind of coming undone when Filippo Mane got injured during, the sequence that led to the equalizer, which, I mean, to be fair, Heidenheim had one pretty big scoring opportunity before, when Dortmund were a bit disorganized at the back, but, it was a half for which a 1-0 scoreline for Dortmund would probably have been the correct result. But, Mane's muscle had different ideas. It's definitely becoming a bit of a theme with this player in particular, sort of making me wonder if he's one of them whose bodies aren't necessarily built for, top level football. We know enough examples of those. Like, immediately my head went to like Marian Sarr. If people remember him, in the club days, he was rated a bit higher even, than Mane during, the youth days. And then when he made his first few appearances in the first team, he didn't really stick because of injuries. I think the most memorable part about him was Jürgen Klopp giving him a smack in Marseille. And like, I think you were ecstatic with Mane's performance up to that point. I think he was pretty good. nothing outrageous. Certainly enjoyed his, ambition in ball playing, and, he didn't look scared or anything. He had a clash with his head, with the boot of a Heidenheim player, which that
Honzak,
guy,
I think it was.
might have been. Honestly, I couldn't pick, other than Dian Drama, I couldn't pick any one of them out of a police lineup. And then after that kind of first half, to go down or concede the equalizer and also have to take out Mane, definitely put a damper on things. And then there were a few disorganized minutes to start the second half, which Julian Nihus, with a lucky deflection of Daniel Svensson, used for Heidenheim's go-ahead goal. And from that point on, I guess it was the Zero Girassi show. Question mark?
Sorry, I wasn't sure if our connection just died. Yeah, it sort of was. Let's talk a little about Mane real quick, because you said I was ecstatic. I was fairly happy with the ball playing. I think there was one pass, especially in the first half, also a through ball to Julian Brandt or in this direction that didn't quite come off, but I was just encouraged to see Mane play such a ball, and I thought overall Mane had a very good, solid-ish, I guess, game, like that he is someone that takes the ball and dribbles forward. That's very encouraging, and of course, his position of play isn't perfect yet. I think we can all admit that, but at least to me, he looks like someone that you can plan with. Now, obviously, with the asterisks that we first have to make sure that physically he is dependable, because right now he's not, because he's injured. I don't know what it does if you play in the Champions League and then a few days later, after not playing as much previously, on that level, and probably a strain on the body, but he was already cramping in the match against Inter, where I also thought he played formidable. Certainly the new development, I guess, with Anselmino leaving the club, so that would have been, to me, still a net positive, because I think we've discussed it before. Youth development and development of those young players is pretty crucial, and you can definitely see the talent that Mane has, and showing you glimpses of that he could be a dependable defender. Obviously, it's really hard to glean from a few glimpses you get whether he really is someone that can establish himself as a Borussia Dortmund center back, or after, say, he plays for 10 games in a row, where you then say, okay, maybe not quite Dortmund level. I don't think we're there yet, but certainly something you would like to develop. And so it's very unfortunate that he picked up an injury. I don't think we've really heard yet for how long he'll be out, but rest assured, it's not going to be just like a week or two. I think this injury looked a little harsher. So yeah, gutted for the kid, because obviously for him, he was sort of on the ascent and finally got the opportunity to play, and I thought made the most out of it. So that puts a damper on. Obviously, Dortmund also don't have the most depth in their backline. Niklas Süle coming on also didn't look in superb form, so hopefully he can round into some form before picking up another injury. And Waldemar Anton was also out recently with illness, so he's coming back into form. But yeah, you can obviously tell how important Anton is. But yeah, Girassi show is what you said, and I guess that's what this was in the game. I mean, Girassi did hit the bar in the first half, and if we talk about good chances, that, to me at least, was certainly the best one next to the Anton score. And yeah, I also totally agree with you. I think both calls on the goalkeepers were okay to give them that way, because Mainka, when he made contact with Kobel, certainly also had way more momentum going into the goalkeeper versus Girassi. I think his head also made a little bit of contact with Ramai's arm. However, he just went up straight. So I would have not given that as a foul either. But I can see when people debate that and say it was more or less the same situation. So yeah, the penalty situation was to me a little funny. I mean, Dortmund did get a bit lucky that the arm made contact in the box. Was not a big of a deflection, but I guess it is a clear penalty, and we have seen plenty of those given against us. Unfortunate for Heidenheim, felt a little similar to the stupid penalty that St. Pauli conceded very late. But I thought it was nice to see Nico Schlotterbeck hype up Guirassy. Right now it's very common practice for the non-penalty taker to pretend he's going to shoot just so all the shenanigans will be deflected, so to speak. But I thought the penalty, even though Ramai made contact with the ball, was still very well taken. And then, of course, to have the counterattack. How many minutes, seconds later was it? It felt like pretty instant after Dortmund did equalize. Wasn't much for sure. Maybe 1 minute or so. Of course, another lucky deflection, bit of theme of the game. But I was very happy for Guirassy to see that ball go into the net, and I thought the curse was a little bit lifted after the Juventus incident where Bensebaini was taking the penalty after long discussions and lamenting by Guirassy. But unfortunately, I guess the curse returned right away with Guirassy skying that second penalty and giving us a lot of heart attacks, because honestly, the last 15 minutes or so of this game were extremely nervous. But I think, I wonder what you think for Guirassy scoring a brace, even with that shanked penalty. At least in my book, it's still net positive. How do you see the situation for him, and if he needs confidence or not?
I thought he had his best game in months, even before scoring the first penalty. I mean, the chip on the crossbar, as you mentioned earlier, I mean, his movement in that situation alone was better than anything he'd shown for the last, 6 or so weeks. So it kind of felt to me like he was going to score in this game anyway. I don't necessarily agree with the penalty being taken particularly well. I mean, it was hit with enough conviction, I suppose, because Ramai got his hand to it but couldn't keep it out. But I don't usually want to give the goalkeeper a chance with penalties, but here we are. I definitely, by the way, also don't understand how many people thought that Schlotterbeck was supposed to take the penalty and then gave it away because he's such a good teammate. I mean, I'm sure he is, but like, to me, it would look very obviously, like you said, that Schlotterbeck kind of took the pressure off Guirassy. And I mean, unless I'm missing something and, somebody actually said that Schlotterbeck was supposed to take the penalty, I don't really buy that idea. So that was a bit annoying almost, during the broadcast. The German broadcasters all were like, oh, look at Schlotterbeck giving up the penalty,
like it's a grand gesture.
Yeah. Such a gracious guy. I mean, from my limited exposure personally to Nico Schlotterbeck, he seems like a very nice guy, but I don't think that he would be Niko Kovac's first choice to take penalties when Can and Bensebaini aren't on the pitch. I'm pretty sure it's Guirassy, and as you said, he kind of took the stress away a little bit. So, anywho, the goal came, I think, something like 65 seconds after the penalty. Very nicely worked by Maximilian Bayer, who made use of his fresh legs on the right side. Nice little...
Yeah, we actually have to discuss the penalty, the substitutions.
Okay.
I mean, I just wanted to highlight that was a positive reaction by Kovac on going down.
I mean, I don't...
2-1.
He brought on Bayer and Chukwuemeka for Koto and Bellingham, right?
Yes.
that was probably because those two were the worst players on the pitch.
Correct.
I mean, if we didn't have so many topics this week, we might need to have a conversation on Joe Bellingham, because honestly, I'm not impressed by anything I've seen over the last few weeks and months, obviously, because basically I think his best performances for Dortmund have come at the Club World Cup against suspect competition, and his development in central midfield's a bit lacking. And I mean, Couto is basically a mystery box. You never know what you get with him. Although you do know that you will get questionable defensive contributions. So it made sense to take those two guys off, and I actually think the most interesting part was bringing on Chukwuemeka in more of a central midfield role, but that was probably because Sabitzer was still out and they don't trust Salih Özcan to play more than mop-up duty. So, but yeah, I mean, Bayer is an obvious substitution. If he's not starting, I will always start him because I think he's a much better version of what Karim Adeyemi gives you. But in this instance, maybe having the fresher legs actually gave Bayer the advantage needed to serve up for Guirassy, who, as you mentioned, had a bit of luck. But maybe that's the kind of luck you get when you're a striker who scored his first goal after... It hasn't actually been this long, because obviously he scored the third goal against Bremen. But it kind of didn't feel like a proper goal for him because Bremen made such a meal of it.
Yeah, it was a bit like the goal he scored against Augsburg, which obviously was a winner, but still that was more of a gift from Augsburg than anything else. But yeah, I'll be honest, Joe Bellingham, I thought had an okay game. Like, I wouldn't say he was horrific, but...
He just doesn't do anything. He completes almost no forward passes. He doesn't attempt many of them. He's so safe. And, I mean, if
that's exactly my point.
If there's an epitome of what Niko Kovac's critics say Borussia Dortmund are at this point, it is basically Joe Bellingham, because he's so scared of making mistakes that he doesn't, try anything of interest.
Yeah. That is exactly my point I was going to make, that anytime Dortmund had any time and space with Joe Bellingham on the ball, and there were 5-6 situations for sure, he just plays a lateral pass or something, or circles possession and takes all momentum away. And it's just such a killer for Dortmund. They just need someone that shows a little bit more urgency, and Joe Bellingham certainly part of that problem. So Kani Chukwuemeka did instill a little bit more of that. So in my mind, because Jan Kot, who, like you said, is a mystery box, I think on paper this would have been a good matchup for him. And had he won his 1v1 situations, Dortmund probably would have easily won the game or decided the game in the first half, because I thought that it's sort of a little bit hinged on his prowess, and since he just couldn't beat his defender, it was unfortunately not going Dortmund's way as much as it arguably should have. So that's really my point on that. So I was happy with those substitutions just because they were offensively minded and actually did address the issues that Dortmund were facing in that game. So for me, that was a positive, because it felt like Dortmund were trying to push forward and attack. And I think up until the point where Guirassy missed the penalty, Dortmund had plenty of counter-attacking chances and opportunities on the break to decide the game, and for several reasons just didn't manage to have the composure to kill it off. But at least they were pushing for it. There was some urgency, and to me that's a positive, because too many times, look at the Inter game for example, Dortmund are not quite showing that, and so it was good for them to at least push for a second goal. And obviously we have to discuss the minutes where Heidenheim could have, should have equalized, scored. I mean, we haven't really mentioned the Piringer header yet, which was pretty much point blank. But yeah, shout out to Heidenheim, I guess, for creating a lot of good chances. But yeah, Lars, do you have any analysis of why Dortmund give away such high quality chances against an opponent like this in a home match where it does feel very must-winny.
I mean, it's not like that's a regular occurrence. Giving away, especially at home, like they've been very defensively solid. So I don't know if it's the changes in lineup defensively over the last few games, which have perhaps taken a bit of the sting out. I think Niklas Süle was definitely a weak point.
Yeah.
I mean, I chuckled to myself when you said he had to round into form. I was wondering whether that was.
It was not. I was oblivious to that pun, but yeah.
I mean, it's almost at a point where it's not even funny. I mean, it probably was never really funny, but like he once again doesn't look to be at the complete height of what he could be as an athlete. I don't know. I think I also would kind of challenge the notion that Heidenheim created a lot of scoring opportunities. I mean, outside of the Pieringer header, I think Dortmund still beat them on expected goals, for example. So I don't know.
I think by quite a lot.
Yeah,
actually.
but that's probably
really
the two
numbers.
penalties, because stupidly German expected goals don't exclude penalties. So you can probably chalk off 1.4 or so from Dortmund's tally, and then it might be closer, but it's not like Heidenheim were super high up. So I don't know. I think
bottom line is Dortmund were still deserved winners.
Yeah, I mean, I think Heidenheim's coach said after the game that 3-3 would probably have been the correct result, and honestly, might have a point there. Then again, if Zero Girassi hadn't been caught in two minds whilst trying to score a penalty, which is never a good thing, I think a fourth goal for Dortmund probably kills the game off completely. I don't know how much time we want to spend on a weird chip that never really had a chance. It wasn't Panenka. He tried to chip it towards the underside of the crossbar or whatever. So just a weird penalty to attempt. Like, I don't understand it, and I think he doesn't either, because he apologized after the game via social media. Like, you scored twice. You're on a hat trick. Just smash it into top corner if you want, and if you hit the post or whatever, then that's something else. But to somewhat arrogantly try to do that Zidane World Cup final chip, I'm pretty sure it cost him a lot of sympathy from Dortmund fans who, after those two goals, were just happy again. And I think it also showed because somewhat soon after the missed penalty, Girassi was taken off, and his name wasn't chanted. He wasn't really, getting a standing ovation or whatever, which usually you would get when you score two goals in a 3-2, about to be a 3-2 winner. So definitely a weird one. And I think on a positive note, Zero Girassi himself said that he's done with penalties for Dortmund.
Yeah. He has missed quite a few, and it has cost Dortmund also some points. I mean, I think the one in St. Pauli, for example, had he scored that, Dortmund, I would argue, would have won that game. But yeah, so now Dortmund do play, as we previously mentioned, away to VfL Wolfsburg, who have drawn against Heidenheim and then lost to Mainz and Köln. They are right now in 14th place. Not really a team that's in form, but that doesn't mean much. But they are usually one of Dortmund's favorite opponents. Dortmund have boogie teams. Wolfsburg's boogie team probably is Dortmund. So I am hoping that Dortmund can take this week that they now have of rest and field a team that really can go to Wolfsburg and beat the ever-living crap out of them. So that is sort of my hope. I don't know exactly what to expect and who will be fit. Like I said, Niklas Süle hopefully uses this week to get himself in a bit of better form. I assume he would probably start next to Schlotterbeck and Waldemar Anton if Emre Can isn't fit until then. And yeah, I wonder if Joe Bellingham and Felix Metscher will form the midfield again in Wolfsburg, or if Sabitzer will play if he's fit enough. Because it is a little bit worrying, but Niko Kovac is also someone that keeps us guessing. For sure, I am not anyone who can predict the lineup. But what last thing I wanted to say about this game is, first of all, it was nice for Dortmund to see them battle back overall and get this win over the line. And second of all, I thought that Julian Brandt still had a pretty decent game. I liked the couple of nice passes that he had. Certainly missed him a little bit against Inter, to be honest, because I thought with that lineup that we played there was just not a lot of creativity. And I did appreciate a couple of nice through balls here and there from Julian Brandt against Heidenheim. So since he's getting a lot of flack, I just wanted to point that out, that I was rather happy with his performance. I mean, there are other things to discuss, but let's just shift our attention to the transfer window. Like I previously mentioned, Aaron Anselmino no longer with Borussia Dortmund, and there was not a player coming in. Lars, I've seen a lot of people criticize Chelsea a lot for basically taking him back and then sending him to Strasbourg. What's your take on this entire, I don't know if you want to call it a farce or move or whatever you want to call it, but on the one hand, it was obviously nice to see that Anselmino cared a lot by being clearly emotional when it was time for him to leave, but still, what do you make of the overall transfer and how much it will now hurt Dortmund in the second half of the season that they no longer have his services at the ready?
I mean, I appreciate that Chelsea were completely within their rights to do this. They had the option to recall him until a certain point in time and use that, and the option was available to them because Anselmino played fewer than 1,000 minutes for Dortmund up to that point. Now, obviously, he missed quite a few games through injury and otherwise probably would have hit 1,000. So I actually did the math. Anselmino played, let's say, 43%. It's a little bit less, but not decisive. 43% of the minutes he was actually available for, and that is obviously also taking into account his coming back from 2 longer spells of injury where you don't go from 0 to 100. So let's say he played roughly half of the minutes available to him. That's a very decent return for a 20-year-old centre half who doesn't have any real experience in European football. So in any other circumstance, I'm pretty sure a club like Chelsea or basically any parent club would have been ecstatic with the returns on that loan. I think you could tell, as you said, that Anselmino definitely felt at home at Dortmund. You can tell that Dortmund were quite fond of him. I think there's pretty much agreement now that Dortmund were trying to, line up a full-time move for the summer. I guess regardless of whether or not Nico Schlotterbeck stays, I think they are, convinced of Anselmino's qualities, and why shouldn't they? I mean, he was really good in basically every game he played.
I would say he was, if he had all center backs available, he was in the lineup. He was the right center back to me, the A1 option.
I don't know that they saw it like that necessarily, because Niko Kovac is very fond of Emre Can, and I think Can, the center half, is a very good player, but he's certainly in the discussion, I would say, over Niklas Süle. So we can take that for what it is. And the fact that Chelsea then exercised their option only because they have, that multi-club ownership system with Strasbourg, where another player of theirs was on loan. They then terminated that player's loan because their new head coach, Liam Rossini, was previously the head coach at Strasbourg, and now Anselmino was shifted there. And then there was also the talk about the entire move being a ploy to get, is it Stade Rennes, to let go of Jeremy Jacquet this winter, who has now signed a pre-contract with Liverpool for the summer. Like, the entire thing just reeked of, I don't know, modern day multi-club ownership. To me, this is all a cancer on football. I want it to be much simpler than this. I think FIFA needs to implement a system where players aren't basically used like tokens. They are human beings. Even if you can also say that Anselmino signed this contract with Chelsea until I think 2031 or some stupid point in time. Like a young player signing with Chelsea needs to be aware of this being a distinct possibility. The loan army of Chelsea is very well known in Argentina, I'm sure, but I think it's just a bit, perverse almost, the way they are treating players and pushing them around. And now he has to play for Strasbourg when he was perfectly in perfectly good hands at Dortmund. But it is what it is. I think for Dortmund, obviously it is a loss. As we said, he was at least their second best option, if not even better, at the right-sided centre-half position. But I can understand that they didn't sign anyone in a knee-jerk reaction, even after Filippo Mani's injury. Maybe that also means that Mani can play again this season. Like, it's not, super long-term, perhaps. Obviously, that is speculation on my part, but I find it's interesting that Emre Can was missing through illness against Heidenheim, and Mane obviously picked up an injury during the game, and they still ended up at full time with Bensebaini on the bench, who at this point is basically a centre half as well. So it's not like they are lacking in numbers necessarily. So I can understand that they didn't sign someone just to have more cover. I think if it came to a situation where they needed, the sixth choice center half, it's basically irrelevant whether that's a signing they make on the final day of the winter transfer window or if that's someone who usually plays in the under 23s. They'd be in the shit anyway, so I can understand that they didn't make a move there. Obviously, I think, the transfer window in its entirety with Campbell and Duranville and Groß and Anselmino leaving, it feels like they are gutting, the middle to lower end of their roster, as it were. But Duranville and Campbell are basically irrelevant for this discussion because they didn't play in the first half of the season. Pascal Groß, I don't know, has anyone missed him since he's gone? Like, obviously I'm pretty sure he'd do better than what Bellingham has given them, but I'm also pretty sure that Bellingham would have gotten most of those minutes anyway. So it's basically also kind of irrelevant. And now I've already said that I understand them not replacing Anselmino, so I can basically understand the lack of activity on the incoming side, but I still think most of us would have felt better if there had been a move, to strengthen the depth, maybe in defense in generally, maybe sign a Can type of player who can play defensive midfield or center half. But I also kind of look at the entirety of this transfer window for the Bundesliga and see very few players I think would have been of interest for Dortmund. Like, the most exciting deal is probably one that came out of the blue with Brian Gruder being loaned to Leipzig. But like, would Dortmund have gone for a loan of Brian Gruder in the winter? I'm pretty sure a lot of people would have said, hey, why are you loaning a player from Brighton? Like, we are not here to develop players for middling Premier League sides. So honestly, I think we talked about the transfer window in in an earlier episode, and we kind of made the point that in the last few years, Dortmund made a lot of moves in the winter because they had to rectify issues from the summer transfer window. Now, this season's summer transfer window definitely hasn't brought the most sparkling of results, but I also don't see like absolutely glaring weaknesses that could have been rectified in this winter. So again, I can understand the rationale behind not making those.
I mean, we all know that Dortmund certainly need to make changes, and we've discussed it with Joe Bellingham. Dortmund just if Dortmund had a good number 6 to pair Felix Metscher with, then we'd be a much better team. But that's just not the case right now. I too would like a couple more wingers or dribblers or whatever. We'll see what Justin Lemmer will bring to the table next summer, and how his integration will work, and if he'll have a instant impact, or if that's something that's still timeline, still a half year out after the start of next season. We'll definitely have to wait and see. Considering that Dortmund currently are 9 points ahead of 5th place, I think it's okay to not make any panic transfers or big course corrections. But yeah, do I have the most confidence in the squad as of right now? No, I feel like there certainly could have been were a couple of moves they could have made, but it is what it is. I'm okay with them punting for the summer transfer window. I don't know what the market was giving now. That's always very hard to gauge. In general, I am of the opinion that Sebastian Kehl and Lars Ricken aren't doing the best jobs they could be doing, but that's a discussion for another day. It was certainly interesting to see Dortmund lose so much talent. I mean, Duranville, certainly someone that can give you a nice impact off the bench. I don't know what Cole Campbell has done for Hoffenheim so far, but hey. I think for most this was a very underwhelming transfer window. So I guess when we speak of underwhelming, we can move on to the Champions League, because the way it ended with losses to Tottenham and Inter of the draw from against Bodo Glimt, I think Dortmund fans were very much hoping for a better outcome, considering it all. But the next opponent in the playoff for the round of 16, I don't know what it's exactly called, against Atalanta is certainly an interesting one. Atalanta, of course, are right now in 7th place in Serie A, and are an opponent that Dortmund, at least on paper, should take care of, even if the home match, which is on the 17th of February, is the first game. But Dortmund managed to reach the Champions League final with playing home game first, so I don't think that's like the biggest talking point, honestly. Bigger talking point is just that you have to play these games now, and that the away game will be between the Leipzig game and the Bayern game in the league. So that's not exactly ideal. And there's, of course, the scenario that the next opponent in the Champions League will either be Arsenal or Bayern Munich. So chances are that if Dortmund progress to the round of 16, they are probably not going to make the quarterfinals, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Lars, what are your thoughts on the Champions League phase, and of course the next opponent, and your confidence level of Dortmund progressing to the round of 16?
I think it's definitely annoying how Dortmund gave away their excellent starting position, let's say. I think probably the turning point was the game against Bodo Glimt, which I was in the stadium for. There was no need to draw that game against... I mean, to be fair, Bodo Glimt have also made the knockout round, so it's not like they are complete cannon fodder, but there was definitely.
And like Dortmund, they beat Man City.
Yeah, but like Man City, when they don't care, is a bit of a different story. Maybe that's actually one of the the things that people need to take more into account. During the league phases when you face these teams. Although I think Man City are also in the playoffs. Are they? I'm not sure. But
Definitely.
then obviously Dortmund played their two worst Champions League games in quite a while, I would say, at Tottenham and against Inter. Especially the game against Inter, that there was no sense of urgency from Dortmund. I think they kind of didn't care whom they were going to face, in the knockout stages, which, as you said, like best case scenario seems, Arsenal or Bayern being, last chance saloon. So I don't know. But I think my confidence level in reaching that round is pretty high because Atalanta this season aren't the same as they were for all those years under Gianpiero Gasperini, who went to Roma this season. They tried to basically replicate that success under Ivan Juric, who was fired, I think, in November. A former Gasperini player and then assistant coach, so it made sense to go for him, but he didn't have a great run of results. And I think he was fired at Atalanta. It was his third club in 1 year. He was also at Southampton and Roma himself. He was the first coach of Mats Hummels at Roma, and they did not get along. So then they signed Palladino, who was previously with Monza. And I mean, they lost in the Champions League to Royal Union Saint-Gilloise. And I think they lost at home to Bilbao, who, if we remember back to the Dortmund game against Bilbao, they did not strike me as a team that cares too much about the Champions League. And then Atalanta made it to the knockout stages with wins over Chelsea and in Frankfurt, head coach-less Frankfurt. So they are in kind of a tailspin. So I don't know. And then on deadline day, Atalanta also sold Ademola Lookman to Atletico and didn't really replace him, if my memory serves. My memory of that event almost 2 days ago. So as you already mentioned, they are 7th in Serie A this season, which is a very competitive league, obviously. But I watch quite a bit of Serie A because I'm an Inter fan, and Inter kind of have had Atalanta's number over the last few years, so maybe that skews my views a little bit. But I mean, we are talking about Borussia Dortmund, who've been to the Champions League final in recent times, have always, progressed reasonably far into the competition against good opposition. So, drawing Atalanta, that is the kind of team you are expecting to beat in the Champions League over 180 or maybe 210 minutes. And if you don't, I mean, you don't deserve the chance to be presumably battered over the head a little bit by Bayern or Arsenal.
Yeah, we'll see about that. I mean, if Dortmund play Bayern in the Champions League over 2 games, it's going to be interesting for sure. I kind of hope that's not going to be the case, but yeah, better over the head is sort of probably the right analogy. But we'll see how these things develop. Honestly, in the meantime, I also am confident that Dortmund will get the performances down in the Champions League, because they've shown it this season that they can play well. Not recently, but usually they find another gear or level of a play that should be enough to see themselves past Atalanta. So for now, I'm confident, but we never know what's going to happen. This is obviously also time of the year where injuries can really throw a wrench into your squad planning and your overall momentum. But for now, I mean, Dortmund, if you exclude the Champions League, are playing okay, decently in the Bundesliga. They're not flying, on not firing on all cylinders or whatever. But I think we're in an okay spot right now, and we'll just have to wait and see what the February brings, and then either we will be very depressed or we will be elated. I don't think there's going to be much in between, because there's just going to be a lot of crucial and deciding games, I assume. So there's that. And I think, Lars, we can also just knock it on the head here, unless there are 1 or 2 points that you still want to make before we exit. All right. In that case, as always, everyone out there, thank you very much for listening. If you feel so inclined, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Until then, goodbye.